So I recently finished Professor Zhang's series on civilization, where he describes America as as a society that is obsessed with violence. And when I heard him say that, I wanted to refute it so bad. I wanted to be like, no, like, we're and I can't do it. Like the more I think about it, America is obsessed with violence. It's so baked into our culture, the media we watch or consume, and like the decisions we make and the things we buy and the things we find fun. And so I wanted to talk about that today. So let me open with this clip right here. I actually don't know what this is from, but I saw it come up on YouTube Shorts, and I'll just play it.
Gentlemen, would you mind putting out your cigars, please?
Come again?
I asked, would you mind putting out your cigars, please?
As a matter of fact, I would mind.
Well, you see, the reason I ask, all due respect, I got a great New York strip sitting over there. Cost me $27 and change, and it tastes like I'm eating a cigar.
Listen, Ace, number one, you're eating a steak at a place called Joe's Stone Crab. And number two, there's no rule that says we can't smoke.
Well, number one, my name is not Ace. And number two, I'm not talking about rules here. I'm talking about manners. You see, there is no rule that says I can't come over here and fart on your entree. But I don't do it. Why? Because it's not good manners. So I ask you again, in the nicest possible way, to please put out the cigars, okay? Thank you.
I hope you realize you've just committed assault.
I know, I know. You know, I remember time was you actually had to hit somebody.
All right, so what is this clip? It's clearly from some like gangster show. This guy's a criminal, gangster type archetype, and he uses violence to get his way. And he is in the right in that when he asks the man to put out his cigar, yes, the man probably should have respected that, because they're in a restaurant. Yes, it's good manners, it's good etiquette. My problem with this show is that it kind of illustrates how quick we are to use violence, and how violence is on the table as an option. Like, look, this guy, he asks him politely to put out the cigar, but then when he doesn't, and he blows smoke in his face, shows the disrespect, he goes immediately in for breaking the finger. This is not a good strategy. Like, if you're in this kind of situation and you want to get what you want, which is to eat your steak without smoke, there's so many other avenues you could pursue. You could ask the restaurant owner or the manager to come in and, further put pressure on these folks to put out their cigars. You could ask to get your table moved somewhere else. The problem with using violence as a means to get what you want is that it's random and chaotic. This guy took a risk by breaking this man's fingers. What if the man stood up and started fighting him, What if he had to defend himself against this man who's clearly, much heavier than him? What if all these guys got up and started, what the hell are you doing? Started a confrontation. He could have started a confrontation. He didn't even ask the people who he's sitting with, hey, is it okay if I go and, start a confrontation with these guys? No, he just did it recklessly. Now, you could argue that that's part of the show. Oh, yeah, it's because they're gangsters. It's because that's what they do. And then, yeah, sure. But this scene, the way the filmmakers set it up and the way this is received in the comments, it makes me think, this is they're trying to glorify this kind of thing. They're trying to put it up on a pedestal and say, wow, this is cool. This is cool that this guy's using, he just breaks his fingers because... Do you see what I mean? The way the filmmakers set this up, it's clearly a right versus wrong scenario. The man in the left is clearly on the right. The man in the right is clearly in the wrong. And so they set it up so that the violence is justified. That's what the filmmakers are trying to that's the message that the filmmakers are making come across here. And I have a problem with that. And as soon as you point this out, as soon as you notice this, you'll see it in every American, popular movie or show. That's not for children, that is. I mean, they're so, people are so quick to use violence in these movies and these TV shows. it's kind of unbelievable once you see the pattern and how, like, this situation, if you applied it to real life, you would not get very far in life. Like this, the person on the left starting this confrontation, I am surprised that they made it to the age that they did if this is how they behave. And I'm not justifying you. All right, you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. Let's move on. I mean, okay, so I've been into enough bars where I've seen a couple bar fights. And I've also seen some that get close, where I'm right there, I'm sitting in the middle of it, and two people are starting a confrontation, and they're like, "Yo, what'd you say about my mother? What'd you do?" Like, "Oh, you want to go? You want to take this outside?" And they start to escalate things. And I find these confrontations really interesting because it could never be me. Like, this is my personal bias. It just goes against every instinct of mine to start a fight with someone. And I'm not like I kind of have the privilege of being tall. So I'm 6'4". I'm pretty tall, and when I'm wearing a jacket, I look pretty like buff. Like I'm big, I've got this mean bitch face on. People don't tend to start fights with me. And so if I didn't have those privileges, maybe I would be more keen to defend myself. Maybe that would be something that I'd want to, that would be more on the table. But I just think if someone starts a fight with me, I'm not going to escalate. I'm not going to be the one to escalate things. There's nothing a stranger could say to me that's going to make me want to fight them. That concept is kind of unbelievable. And maybe I have the privilege of like being secure in myself and like, being confident in who I am, and I would much rather joke with the person or shoot some insults back, but mostly laugh and like try and brush it off. And if they are so intent on starting a fight, I would leave. Like I would just leave the bar. Like that's not a big deal to me. Anyway, so but the fact that it's so common, like that I see and hear stories about fights starting, and I know there's alcohol involved, but it just shows like that the violence is in the mind of a lot of people, at least where I live. All right, let's move on. So look at this fucking truck, dude. What am I showing you here? So this is a lifted pickup truck, and I drive from Boise to Nampa every day for work, which is like a 30-minute drive. And I'm kind of driving out like into Trump's America, if you know what I mean. And I see a lot of this, like these lifted pickup trucks with the square hood up here. And the other day I saw one towing something and it was accelerating. So like this truck is doing maximum like right now. What's the problem with this? Well, this guy cannot see out of the windshield. There's so many trucks and SUVs and pickups on the market now that have this square hood and this lifted body design. These kids are sitting all in front. Only the orange kid is visible to the driver. What in the world? And everyone just sort of, like, we just kind of looked past this, and it's been this way for almost a decade, where these SUVs are on the market still, and nothing's been done legislation-wise to stop this. And I bet if you ask the driver of this pickup, like, "Hey, are you concerned about like not being able to see what's in front of you?" They would have some bullshit answer. They would have some bullshit. Like, let's be real. The problem with this example, like the suburban mothers, they are actually genuinely concerned for their safety. And so what their instinct is they see these pickup trucks driving around that are so intense and huge that they feel the need to go out and buy an SUV that looks like this. It's not actually safer. These things roll over like crazy, and you probably get more bang for your buck out of a minivan or a station wagon if you're a mother. But this is what the feeling creates. You buy this SUV, and what it does is it creates this arms race of vehicles in the US where you have to buy a bigger and bigger vehicle every year because everyone else is doing it. And I believe it's a huge problem. I think it's a reason why traffic fatalities have been going up in the last couple of years. Let's talk about football. Football is the most watched sport in the US. Pretty much everyone has an opinion about football. And we watch the Super Bowl every year, and it's a huge event, with you bring your family, you make food, and it's a big party. Well, this sport is insane. Like, if you look at it from the outside, it's completely ridiculous. You have players that crash into each other. They wear armor. It's basically armor, and they crash into each other at huge speeds. Look at this statistic. Look at this. They did a study in 2023, and they looked at the brains of 376 deceased former NFL players, and 90% of them had brain damage. Like, why? Like, as a parent, why would you let your kid play this sport? And then you add on top of this, you go to a football game, and they might have a show, a military show, where they fly jets and they fly airplanes and helicopters and military vehicles over the arena. Sometimes after singing the national, doing the national anthem. And it's meant to be a celebration of the American military force. I know that like a lot of people appreciate the technology behind this, and the technology is very impressive of like jet engines and aeronautics. I get that, but that's not how it's presented, right? We all know this is a show of American patriotic military force, while we're playing a game that is very inherently violent. When you start like seeing this in this way, it's kind of freaky. We're getting kind of into like politics, and I thought of an example when I was thinking of this video. I thought of an example from 2015, when I was I think it was 14. No, I was 15 years old about, and I had a girlfriend. And I asked her one time, what do you think of Trump? Because this is like when Trump is like running for office, he's about to get elected, and a lot of people think he's insane, but he hasn't like he's still in his build the wall phase, like he's kind of weird and an outcast in politics. And I asked my girlfriend, what do you think of this guy? And she said, she gave this answer that was like, well, I think he'll do his best to keep America safe. And I thought, what a bizarre answer. What a bizarre answer. Keep America safe. We live in like Boise's one of the safest cities in the United States statistically. And we live in like the suburb. Like, I'm not concerned about my safety internationally. Like internationally, no one's going to invade the US. That would be fucking insane. Everyone knows that's not going to happen. So what are you really talking about here when you talk about like he's keeping America safe? Well, he's talking about immigration. She's talking about immigration. And this has been boiling for a long time. If you can't see where I'm going with this, guys, I'm talking about ICE, immigration and custom enforcement. This, like, what's going on in this country right now is batshit crazy. People are being picked up off the streets for crimes they didn't commit, and without a warrant, like they're being taken out of their homes because this organization can issue their own warrants for some reason, and they're being taken to warehouses and facilities where they'll be held for days, sometimes weeks or months, and then shipped off to some country that they don't know. It bypasses the typical judicial system where a judge, here's a case and then decides what should happen with the person, and the person gets some, they don't just get picked up off the street, taken away from their family, taken away from their life. It's completely insane. But what I realized is that some people support this still. I had an argument with my family around dinner. Some of my extended family was there, and they thought that this was a good idea. They believed that America was under attack, and that this was a justifiable means to defend the country. And I could say a lot more about this argument, but I imagine we've had, my viewers have had a lot of similar arguments, because you'll be surprised how many people support this policy. If you opened Fox News if you opened Fox News at any time during the year of Trump's election, you would see probably some reporting on Fox News about illegal immigrants killing someone. This is what you would see. Every time I did this throughout the year, I would see a story that looks like this. They put the guy's face up there. The dude's brown, and he's accused of doing some crazy crime like sexual assault. I remember when Laken Riley was killed. She was a woman who was killed by an illegal immigrant. There was this huge buzz from the conservative side. Oh no, we need to do something, and it's a terrible tragedy. There's no going around that. But they weaponized this event to pass the Laken Riley Act, which made it easier to detain people who were not citizens. And I bet you didn't notice this. I bet you didn't hear about the Laken Riley Act because they're not going to report on the actual, consequences. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. The point is that Fox News used they manipulated Americans' fear. And this is what it all comes down to. Is the reason people use violence is because they're afraid. They're afraid for their survival. And I believe that Americans are deeply afraid of something. Maybe it's racism or xenophobia. They're afraid of some outside force coming in, and that may or may not be true. But the fact is that Fox News was able to take advantage of people's fear of illegal immigrants, and make people believe that this is some kind of issue. I'm not saying that illegal immigration is not an issue. I'm saying that they made it seem like this was an issue worth locking people up and picking them off the streets and justifying this horrible, horrible behavior. They took advantage of my family and their fear. It's disgusting. It's totally disgusting. That's why violence is a cycle. It's because violence causes fear in others, and then that fear causes them to be violent. There's this saying in where, let's say you have 10 terrorists, and then you kill 10 terrorists. What does that mean? 10 minus 10, right? You'd think it'd be 0. You'd think you'd have 0 terrorists. But by killing 10 terrorists, you killed somebody's brother, you killed somebody's father, you killed somebody's provider, you killed someone's neighbor, and you ravaged a community. Whether they, because to this place, a terrorist is their freedom fighter, and so what you actually get is not 0, you get 20. You just doubled the number. Because people are going to feel very compelled to go out and fight for their deceased loved one. And so this is why in Sun Tzu's Art of War, which a lot of generals will read, and you might read if you go into the military, it's one of the very first lines in that book is that you should not use violence unless absolutely necessary. Let me actually get it. So I have Sun Tzu's Art of War here, and I have some quotes. So he says that there is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. He's basically warning against the dangers of going to war. It's extremely exhausting. It drains your resources. It kills a lot of people. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Even if you've decided to go to war, even if diplomacy fails and you have, you're going to commit to this, he says that the best strategy is not to do prolonged warfare, but to find a way to capture an army or subdue the enemy without any bloodshed. That is the best way, even in the strategy of using violence. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. You have to be careful about using violence. You have to be calculated. You cannot use it out of ego, such as in the bar fight. You cannot use it out of negligence, like in the instance of buying pickup trucks and SUVs. You have to be careful, and you cannot use it as a means of solving. Like, guys, the thing about this ICE thing is that it is not going to solve the problem. You cannot throw money at this and hire officers to take people out of homes and throw them out of the country. It's a completely disabling and disorienting and destabilizing force. Before Trump came in, okay, so here's what really solves immigration. You have judges, you have people who keep track of immigrants, and you take them in front of the judge, and the judge decides to do based up the law. Before Trump was president, we had 600 immigration judges. Trump fired 200 of them. Now we have 400 of them. What on earth kind of strategy to solve immigration is that? Well, he's not actually trying to solve it. What he's trying to do is he's trying to appeal to the imaginations and fantasies of Americans who are afraid of illegal immigration, which is to use violence in such a brash and visible way. He's not actually trying to solve the problem. Real problem solving in politics is very slow. It's very boring. You have to read a lot of news to understand what's going on. And so that's like, you gotta understand. Trump is doing this because he's trying to hold on to his support and his power. You need to understand that people in authority positions do not always do what's best for the people underneath them. Usually what they do is they do what keeps them in power. When you realize this fact, is he doing this to keep himself in power? When you ask that question, it will start to reveal a lot of things. So I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to not get into fights at bars. I would encourage you to not buy pickup trucks like this. I would encourage you to think differently about our national pastime. And I would encourage you to view violence as a last resort for survival. If survival is on the table, you should exhaust every other option of de-escalation before you choose violence. And thank you. Thank you for watching.